This is the real story of a cartel that deceived a father and kidnapped his children to force them into brothels, and of a man who risked everything to save them. The story begins in Tegucigalpa, Honduras, where a young girl named Rocio Aguilar joyfully plays her drum while singing. A former beauty queen, Giselle, arrives at the Aguilar household and speaks with Rocio's father, Roberto. Claiming to represent a talent agency for child stars, she explains that she heard Rocio's voice at the market and wants to sign her. Moments later, Rocio's younger brother, Miguel, enters the room and quickly draws Giselle's interest as well. Roberto agrees to bring the children to a studio where they are grouped with other kids for a supposed photo session. Giselle instructs Roberto when to return for them, but when he comes back at the arranged time, the building is deserted and eerily dark. Panic sets in as he realizes something is terribly wrong. Meanwhile, the children are seen being forced into a van with Giselle, destined for a horrific new life as victims of human trafficking. Across the border in Calexico, California, Homeland Security agent Tim Ballard prepares an undercover operation to apprehend a notorious predator, Ernst Oshinsky. The team monitors Oshinsky as he downloads files containing images of exploited children, then storms his home and successfully arrests him. Despite capturing nearly 300 predators throughout his career, Tim is painfully aware that the true victims remain largely unfound. Determined to change that, Tim pulls Oshinsky from his cell and pretends to be a fellow pedophile in order to earn his trust. Using this deception, he learns of an upcoming transaction involving a child known as Teddy Bear, who turns out to be Miguel. With the evidence secured, Tim orders Oshinsky returned to prison and prepares to pursue the next step in the mission to rescue the children. Tim and a team of agents head to the U.S.-Mexico border, where Miguel's buyer, Earl Backman, arrives with the boy. The agents arrest Miguel, while Tim approaches the child gently to reassure him. He takes him out for a meal, during which Miguel opens up about his harrowing experience of being abducted and imprisoned for what felt like months. Flashbacks reveal Giselle and her crew forcing terrified children into trafficking, followed by Miguel's time under Earl's custody. Miguel then confides in Tim that Rocio is still being held captive and begs him to rescue her. He also shows Tim a necklace of Saint Timoteo, a gift from Rocio meant to keep him safe. After Miguel is reunited with Roberto, Roberto shares the pain of still missing one of his children. The anguish weighs heavily on Tim, who returns home to his wife Catherine and their 6 kids. Catherine empathizes with Roberto's suffering, pushing Tim further toward his resolve to dismantle the trafficking ring, despite warnings from his superior, Frost, to stay out of it. Tim's mission leads him to Cartagena, Colombia, where many of the children have been transported. There, he partners with Vampiro, a former cartel member, to set a trap for the traffickers. After uncovering details about a sex hotel operation in Thailand, Tim proposes replicating the setup in Colombia to lure Giselle and her associates. They also discover that Giselle's true identity is Katie Juarez. Tim and Vampiro then arrange a meeting with one of Katie's men to negotiate the delivery of the children to the staged location. As they continue gathering intelligence, Vampiro opens up about his troubled past. He recalls becoming involved with a girl he thought was in her 20s, only to later learn she was just 14 and had been trafficked since the age of 6. The revelation drove him to a suicide attempt, but he now believes his purpose is to dedicate his life to saving children from the same fate. Tim resonates with Vampiro's conviction and fully commits to the mission. Frost contacts Tim to inform him that he cannot provide financial support for the mission, urging him instead to return home. Refusing to abandon his cause, Tim resigns from his position and commits to completing the mission on his own. With Vampiro's assistance, they collaborate with an officer named Jorge to lure Katie and her men into a trap. The team establishes a beachside setup where half of the children are delivered. During the operation, Tim spots one of Katie's men, Karn, attempting to escape with a young boy named Simba. When a goon pulls a gun on Tim, Vampiro intervenes just in time. Soon after, the rest of the children are brought in. Reinforcements from the U.S. Embassy, sent by Frost despite his earlier refusal, arrive on site, leading to the arrest of Katie and her crew, even as she desperately tries to pose as the victim. Once the traffickers are apprehended, the rescued children gather together to play and sing. Vampiro turns to Tim, calling it the true sound of freedom. However, amid the 54 rescued children, Rocio is still missing. Later, one of Katie's captured men is interrogated by Tim's team. After discovering that Karn was killed in his cell, the man finally confesses. Rocio was sold to the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, specifically to a ruthless figure known as El Alacrán, the Scorpion. Jorge warns Tim that entering rebel-occupied territory is a suicide mission, but Vampiro devises a risky plan, posing as doctors to infiltrate the camp. Disguised, Tim and Vampiro travel by boat along the river until armed rebels intercept them. After searching their supplies and discovering vaccines, the rebels take Tim deeper into the jungle. He is brought to El Alacrán's camp, where he finally finds Rocio, only to be forced into producing cocaine under the rebels' control. At night, Tim waits for Scorpion and his men, who are drinking and singing, as he plans to rescue Rocio. She screams when she sees him, but Tim quickly calms her and instructs her to follow his lead. Unfortunately, Scorpion hears the scream and rushes to her. He grabs her and attempts to assault her again, but Tim intervenes, engaging Scorpion in a fierce fight and ultimately killing him. Tim takes Rocio and escapes before the others realize their leader is dead. He reaches Vampiro, who is waiting in a van, and together they flee as the rebels fire at them, successfully making their getaway. Before parting ways, Tim returns the St. Timothy necklace, a gift from Miguel, to Rocio. She is later reunited with Roberto and Miguel at the hospital, who joyfully bring her back to Honduras. There, she discovers a real drum in her room, a gift from her father, and begins to play and sing with joy. The closing text notes that the real Tim Ballard's congressional testimony helped recover over 120 trafficking victims and led to new international cooperation laws in sex trafficking investigations. His partnership with Kathy is cited as the inspiration for undertaking the mission. The film concludes by highlighting that more people are enslaved today than when slavery was legal, with many victims being children.